What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex. In this video, I'm going to be ranking every single Fast and Furious movie. Super excited to do it. This comes from a diehard fan, but a fan of really the most recent movies. I'd say, maybe 5 or so on. So this video might be a bit different than what you've seen online. And let's start just immediately with number 11. There's 11 of these movies, right? Because Hobbs and Shaw does count. And I want to start with Tokyo Drift. Tokyo Drift is 11. Tokyo Drift is the worst Fast and Furious film. And here's the funny thing. I'm not going to spend too much time on this film. I don't think it deserves it. But no, honestly, I think for fans of the franchise, Tokyo Drift is either always very low in a ranking or always very high, right? You'll have people that say, surprisingly, Tokyo Drift's my favorite one. It's either that or it's the worst one. I've never seen, say, Tokyo Drift in the middle of a ranking. I don't even think that exists. I don't even think there's a ranking out there that has it there. No, I mean, really quickly for Tokyo Drift, it never got me. Now, I rewatched it leading into F9, I believe. So it's been a little while, and before that, it was even longer. But I just always looked at Tokyo Drift just as, it is the oddball, odd child, just like different beast entirely, because it is. And, you've had none of the cast. Obviously, you have the introduction of Han there, and Han becomes one of the better characters, I think, in the franchise. But look, he doesn't save it. I will say this, okay? After watching F9, the group that is introduced, your main cast of characters in Tokyo Drift, I think they work better now than they did back then. I also think they work better in relation to the Fast and Furious characters, like you see them in F9, versus them leading their own film. I don't think they can do it. I don't think they did do it. And that really, to me, sinks the entire movie. Okay, number 10 is Too Fast, Too Furious, Fast and Furious 2, whatever you want to call it. This movie is not bad. I think I've only watched this movie maybe like twice my entire life, and I was kind of surprised that I liked it the second time I watched it, again, leading into F9. I don't think it does anything special. It obviously starts to bring in some of the key cast of characters that you're going to start to love. Probably not in that movie, but later on. It's fine, but to be honest, and you'll see this with the list, F1, or the very first one, that is the best of that group, and then it really starts to elevate itself once you get to Fast 5. I don't have too much to say about Too Fast, Too Furious. Coming in at number 9 is going to be Fast and Furious 4. This one is always looked at as like the series low. I don't see it like that. Obviously, I think it's the third worst one. It's not great, but it's not bad. I really only dislike Tokyo Drift. So when I'm watching them and saying, okay, which one don't I like? It's Tokyo Drift. Everything else I think, enjoy in the moment. Again, there's nothing too special with 4. You get the introduction of Giselle. I mean, that's really, like, as I'm thinking about it now, does it really matter? It somewhat sets up 5, but they so quickly resolve that issue in the very beginning of 5 that it's just unbelievable. So really, 4 doesn't matter. I guess Vin Diesel's return, full-on return to the franchise, right? That was a big thing. But so many people look at this as the series low. I don't think it is, but I do think it is on the lower end. Coming in at number 8, I'm actually going to go F9. This felt right. F9, I rewatched it right leading into F10. So this is like fresh on my mind. A lot of these movies I did watch right before F10. F9 is just, it's okay. It's okay. It's an okay film for sure. It has its moments. It has its over-the-top moments that I even enjoy. John Cena, I actually think as Jacob was really, really good. Not too much of a fan of the flashbacks, the whole origin story of Dominic Toretto and all that stuff. I didn't really need that. To me, one of the things that stood out, and I was telling my wife this, even though she didn't want to hear it, but I was telling her this live as I was watching. When you have a movie as ridiculous as Fast and Furious is, okay? It's a ridiculous franchise. I understand it. You understand it. And you either love it or hate it. But one kind of unspoken rule about that is you never are supposed to say it out loud in the film, or at least this franchise does best when they're not saying it out loud. So when you have a really big amount of, in retrospect, it's not too much, but several times they'll focus on Roman talking about invincibility, right, and just kind of being able to take it. Look, I mean, I don't even like that actually about these movies. I wish some of these characters died and stayed dead. Now, Giselle, fantastic that she's back. Han, justice for Han, like all that stuff is very true. But sometimes I do want there to be these big stakes where a character should die and stay dead. And they've barely done it. Like Elena, that's like one of the only characters or Vince, there's very few characters they've done it to. So when Roman brings up like the invincibility thing, it's like, no, it's too meta. It's too like you're aware that we're aware and you're making fun of it, but I just really didn't like it. Going to outer space was pretty cool. I think it's still the same thing where it's like it's absolutely insane, but I kind of like it. Like I said, the group of Tokyo Drift, like I think they did really well in the film. But ultimately, I just don't think it has also the highs, and you'll see as we go through the rest of them, it's just not as good. It's not as good, even at its best, versus the other films, the other better films. That's why I would put it here. And next up, at number 7, I'm actually going to go the very first one, Fast and Furious. I like it. I like this movie a lot. I don't think I've watched this movie all that much either, but I remember, the first time I watched it, it was enough to like get me in, and then I kind of fell in love with the subsequent, movies. Going back, it's like, there's something very refreshing, and I think that's the case for a lot of people, right? Where like F1 got people. Like it got people because it was a little bit more grounded. It was about street racing. It was about this family dynamic. It had some kind of grittier characters and some character dynamics. It's really good. Like the first Fast and Furious movie is extremely good. It's not as crazy as the other ones, and again, just based on my personal preference, I prefer those. But this is an excellent. I think this is where we jump, right? F9, but then once we start to getting to this part of the ranking, I love all of them. It's just how much do I love one compared to the others. Okay, number 6 is Hobbs and Shaw. This movie moves around. So, like, every time I watch this movie, I think some parts I like more and some parts I don't like more. I always, the pacing of this movie is actually really, really good. The only time that it starts to drop, I think, is when they go to Samoa towards the end. But you know what? Upon watching it again, like 5-6 days ago, it actually is kind of not slow there as much as I thought that it was. I think the jokes are excellent. I think, the riffing off between Jason Statham and The Rock, right? Like, it's really good. The action is good. I think they rely a little bit too much on CG. Some of the chases with Idris Elba's character, I think the one when they're leaving the factory with the scientists, and after that whole thing goes down, there is a lot of CG that honestly looks quite bad. It looks quite bad. So I'm not a huge fan of that. But beyond that, it's a fun movie. It's an entertaining movie. It's got jokes. It doesn't have so much races, but it's got action. It's got good fight scenes. And I think it tells like a very concise, direct story that is pretty darn solid. And it's got two amazing, I think, Luke Hobbs and then obviously Deckard Shaw. Those are two phenomenal characters in Fast and Furious. So good to see them shine. And hopefully we get a second one. Coming in at number 5 is going to be Fast X, Fast 10, the one we just got. This was a bit of I was trying to figure it out. Where does this movie land? And ultimately, I can't put it, below some of the ones that we've talked about. I think, this kind of Hobbs and Shaw mark is a good little line of, okay, these are movies I really, really, really enjoy, and where does it kind of line up with that? I think Fast 10 is really good. I think Dante is a fantastic villain. I think that is most likely this movie's strength. Also, I'd say kind of like just coming back down to earth a little bit. I like the insanity. I like the entire, opening, or not necessarily opening, but with the bomb, and that is over the top, and I think they did that well. Even Dom driving down, like a dam. Like, I thought that was pretty fun as well. I love that they are like, hey, we're doing this. We're doing Infinity War. We're going to leave you on a cliffhanger. We're going to separate all the groups, and you're going to have to trust us that we can actually do this thing. And you know what? I do. Getting Giselle back, which is such a win. Getting The Rock back, which is an even bigger win. When you look back at this movie, it probably is just a setup for the last one. If there is only 2 parts, maybe there'll be 3 parts, but maybe that's how you look back at it. But I also think just in its own, I think it's got good moments. I think it's got emotion. It's got some really good fight scenes. Again, it brings it a little bit more grounded. I don't know if they did it the greatest in terms of, because they split everybody up and holy God, they jump, right? Like the whole middle of the movie, they're spending 2 minutes with this group, then 2 minutes with another group. And it is definitely too much jumping. Absolutely it is. But at the end of the day, I think it is a lot of fun. I think Dante kind of steals the show, and I could probably rewatch it just for him. I say Jason Statham, maybe he's the best villain. Dante's probably top 2. You could maybe replace Shaw with him and be okay. And so I think that gives this movie a little bit of like a bonus point. Coming in at number 4 is Fast 7. This one will always hold a very special place in my heart. I do think it's because of Paul Walker. I just always have a blast with this movie. The ending legitimately gets you emotionally, I think, like every time. And I think it maybe gets you more like if you marathon it, right? Like if you marathon, you see Paul Walker in so many of these films. And I mean, we all know, like, what happens in that. Not all of those scenes are actually him. Like, it's not depressing, but it's like, what Vin Diesel or what Dom says, at the end and the song and, them driving away. It's honestly beautiful. It's maybe the greatest moment in any Fast and Furious movie is when they're on the beach to the end of that film. I think that's maybe as good as Fast and Furious can ever get. And it's sad, like that. I mean, how did that happen? It had to happen because Paul Walker died, right? So, I mean, but the whole movie in it of itself, I think is great. I think Shaw is a very good villain. Up until that, I think he's the best villain, maybe. Yeah, I would say they've ever had. Obviously changing him to be a good guy like muddies the water, but I think like pure villain in that film, he's a force to be, right? I mean, I guess like Dom in 8 is like the best villain, right? Because he's so powerful and all that stuff. But no, I think Shaw is a great villain. I think everybody does so good. This is when Ramsey gets introduced, and I think she's fantastic, and she's become a really big part of the films. I'll always like these. And some of the quieter, the slower moments, some of the conversations between Brian and Mia or Dom and Brian, like there's some really good stuff in this film. Coming in at number 3 is Fate of the Furious, F8. I love this film. I've always loved this film. You have the down from 7 and you say, okay, well, like, what do you do now? All right, this will be the first film without Paul Walker entirely. And I think to a lot of people, this is where it started to completely fall apart for them. I totally disagree. I think 8 is a blast. I think it's very, very funny. I think there's great characters. I like the Dom turning, to the dark side kind of thing. The Elena and Cypher and, shooting her right in front of him. Like, I would say this. This is Vin Diesel's best performance. I think pretty easily of the however many 9 or 8 movies that he's done of Fast and Furious, this is easily the best he's ever been as Dom. I think it's because they kind of put him through the most, right? He has to do these things to his family. He watches Elena, and little Brian or little B right in front of his eyes. Like, I think he does fantastic. So I've always liked this film, again, since it first came out. Watching it again, leading into F10, it's like, yep, it's still one of my favorites. Like, okay, coming in at number 2 is Fast 5. This will always be my number 2 because, well, if you can read the room, you can figure out the rankings. Fast 6 is my favorite Fast and Furious film of all time. So let's do Fast 5 first. I think it's amazing. I can see why other people have it as their favorite, okay? But for me, it drags on a little too much in specifically, I guess, the middle portion for it to be considered my favorite movie. It's incredible. I mean, I'm not saying like it's bad whatsoever. It's got probably the greatest plot of the whole franchise. I think the dynamic of like the team and the idea of the heist, and it's so over the top, and that final sequence of them having like the vault is so cool. Like, it's just so amazingly cool. But again, it just drags just a little bit, which puts it below 6. But I think it's an excellent film. And again, I totally get why people think it's people, I guess it is their opinion, why people say it is their favorite movie. But 6 to me will always be my favorite. I think the ending is so good. Okay, so the plane and the runway sequence and Giselle dying, and then obviously you connect it to Tokyo Drift, so you have Han dying. That will always get me now, even though both of them are alive now, right? So it's like, does it diminish 6? Well, I think in the moment, 6 kind of has the biggest stakes. Because, you go after Mia. That's a big thing, towards the end. You have the whole Letty thing where she's kind of the villain and she comes back. So I think that was really well done. But then you have, again, some major character deaths. You have Gina Carano's character swapping. You have The Rock, kind of on his side in this one, which I like that, kind of companionship. And you also have, Luke Evans as the other Shaw brother, and I think he does a really good job. I think at the time, he's exactly the villain they kind of needed to balance what they did in 5 and before it. So I think he was kind of a breath of fresh air. I think he was fantastic. So to me, this one, it's got great action. It's got jokes. It's got emotion. It's got the highest stakes, I believe, of the entire thing. Probably even still more than F10. Now, maybe like F11 will have the highest stakes of the whole thing, but up until now, it's been 6. You could say because of Han and Giselle, that's maybe, hurt it a little bit, but I try to look at it in the moment. In the moment, which one, captured me, and 6 absolutely did. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. What are your own rankings? Make sure you're subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.